Aloha, and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, where we welcome Matt Pickett of Hey, We Like Your Pod into today's episode as Joe and I do another top 5 recap because the Packers have, hold on, they have done something today. They have extended Kenny Clark for 3 years and $64 million. Joe, we finally have Packers news for the first time in what feels like months. It might have been months, actually. But
I sent out the good old clarion call. I said, Packers content creators unite. We actually have news. This is obviously not the contract a lot of people were expecting. And a lot of people were worried that maybe this one doesn't get done because it is a third contract for Kenny. And the Packers haven't had the greatest of luck when it comes to third contracts with their players. But, I mean, he's still 28. It feels like he's been in the league for 100 years now, and he's still playing at an elite level. There was no doubt that they needed to bring him. But like Mike said, we love to have you on here, Matt. It's been a while since you've been on our podcast, so we had to make sure that although you are in a rough seat because you're following Tom Grassi. So
I know. I thought about that. I was like, man, I guess this is how they follow up Tom Grassi. I don't know. That's crazy, but
I really do. I struggled with it because it's like, how do you follow? I thought about shutting the podcast down right there. How do you follow Tom Grassi? I mean,
and good night, people. That's the end. Final episode. Season 5. Yeah, it's funny you said that. The Packers haven't had good luck with third contracts. I think it's more the Packers players haven't had good luck with getting third contracts from the Packers.
Yeah.
And that has often been the right move because you see the players go on, it seems like a year too early. Like we always talk about. No, it's actually exactly when you should have done it because they we have a year left. And so we didn't give them 3 years. And that's good because it would have been like, a bunch of wasted time because they found after a year. But I think that is the point you make about Kenny Clark being still really young. I mean, he's actually like 23, isn't he? He's like 22. So,
a baby.
Just a baby, this guy. So,
I think this with some champagne.
He can finally drink now.
So I do think that it was the right move. I was worried they would just kind of cast him aside like they tend to do, because they don't like those third contracts. I'm really glad to see that. Everyone loves Kenny. He's amazing, and he's just such a good Packers person. Remember the community, leader on the team, does things. How do I say that? The phrase you always hear is goes about his business the right way. So you love to see that. It's good stuff. It's good news. When it broke just before we started here, about a couple of hours maybe before we started, I was like,
something like that.
They did that for you guys. They did it for OPE.
Yeah, that's the truth. They knew we were begging for somebody to drop some kind of Packers news just so we could have conversation about it. But yeah, I mean, like you said, they are kind of selective on who they give third contracts to, but the ones that they've given, they have given third contracts out to people. I mean, the obvious one that sticks out right now is Bakhtiari, and they gave him the third contract. Immediately, he destroys his knee, and we have no clue if he's even going to play again. I mean, he still wants to, and he's going through rehab and all that, but who knows what's going on there. Rodgers is another one you can say got, another contract after his second big one. Did he get the fourth, or was it just the third that he got?
I don't know the timeline well enough to say. Do you know, Mike?
I think it's technically a fourth because he signed he had his rookie contract, signed the 2011 or the 2008 one that was the super underrated contract. Then he signed the one right after Clay signed his extension, and then signed the one that made him really hard to trade. So I think technically it's 4. And then you get into the weeds of is it a 5th one because it's a renegotiation of the 4th one kind of thing. So it's somewhere in that 4th, 5th, when you get into how many degrees of separation do you have on one side of your family kind of thing. And it's a 4th on one side, it's a 4th on your grandfather's and a 5th on your grandmother's. So it's you round up or down based on which side it is kind of thing. So hey man, Bob's your uncle, and dot your T's, cross your I's, and yeah, we're there.
So I mean, they are very, very picky on who they give the third contracts to, but the ones that they've given, you can argue haven't been, because with the Rodgers one towards the last couple of contracts, it's been okay. Well, you know, is he still at level, or is he still, you know, capable of living up to the contract? And then Bakhtiari and all that. So, but yeah, Kenny, great. You know, wishing him a lot of luck and glad. I've this one I was kind of more certain on, just because of at the end of this season they're going to have a lot of empty spots on that defensive line, and somebody was going to have to be re-signed.
Yeah, and we talked about that. We talked about that after the draft, before the draft, after the draft, where basically the way that their D-line was set up before you extend Kenny is you have no run defenders under contract for the 2025 season at this point. So this, you know, this reestablishes that they do have an answer moving forward in terms of their run defense. Switching to the 4-3 is going to make another, you know, it's going to impact that as well. But I do wonder if you still see a Slayton extension, you know, something, you know, especially if they can quote unquote team friendly it and stuff. But it'll be interesting to see what Goot and Russ Ball try to do here moving forward, because you do want to lock in that interior D lineman, because it's hard to find and develop those kind of guys, because it, you know, you've seen it with Slayton where it takes time. Kenny is kind of a, he's a little bit of a unicorn in that sense, where it took him his rookie season, then he's been pretty consistently good the rest of the way. So yeah, I think it's a good, smart move. I think that, you know, and the way that this contract pays out, Kenny, he is, hold on,
I think they said like the 12th highest paid.
Yeah, exactly. Lineman. So the top right now is Chris Jones, who's his classmate from the draft and is 2 years older than Kenny, 1 or 2 years older. I think they're like, he's either like 18 months to 2 years older than Kenny. And then, so yeah, he's basically making $10 million a year more than Kenny is. And so, you know, yeah, you're taking a chance that you're paying Kenny into his early 30s, but his style of play, and, you know, that's what's good about it, is that the good side of it is Kenny's game isn't super dependent on like elite athleticism or, you know, elite. His elite trait is that he's just steady. Like, and I know that doesn't sound sexy or exciting, but it's like, hey, here's just a guy that, you know, he's going to do his job. And especially in this new defensive scheme, which is going to allow him to one gap everything. It's like, okay, it's him against his man. There's no like, okay, he's got extra stuff on his plate. And ideally, you're giving him reduced snap numbers because, you know, you have the young guys that are coming up that you trust, and all, you know, hopefully Wyatt takes another step, and the rest of the guys in that room. But yeah, you kind of just playing the odds that Kenny's going to still be, you know, he'll be diminished slightly because of age, but maybe the new scheme improved play of the guys around him. Because really, the best player he's played with on the interior D line was an aging Mike Daniels for the first couple of years of his career. And it's honestly kind of been it in terms of interior D linemen that have played next to Kenny. So you're hoping that the guys who have flashed in the last couple of years, you know, Carl Brooks, Devontae Wyatt, that they can take the next step. That, you know, if Slayton or whoever you bring in next year to be that, you know, predominant run stuffer, those guys are going to take, you know, it's going to take different kinds of, whether it's the snap count, the double teaming, all of those kind of things are going to limit different kinds of mileage off of Kenny's body, and you keep him as fresh as you can moving into his early 30s. And I know we're sitting here talking about him getting a third contract, but dare I say, if it works out, if Hafley works out and some of these younger guys work out, you might see Kenny in position to get one more 2 to 3 year deal kind of thing and stuff. But those are questions for 2027, Mike and Joe. We will bridges when we get to it. But honestly, it just from, you know, happy for Kenny, but if you know, like we said, it's not the contract we were all looking for, but from a Packers fan, if you're looking at roster construction, this is something that you should be very pleased with going into the 2024 season.
For sure. I mean, for me, it was like contract 1B I was looking for. I've been really kind of waiting about this one. I actually thought we'd hear it before Jordan Love, so I wasn't too surprised that it came out when it did. But Mike, your take of like possibly looking at, maybe someday a fourth contract for Kenny Clark, like that's a spicy take, and I'm here for it. I love that.
Well, with as old as Kenny or as young as Kenny is, he'll be playing when the young one over there takes over the OPE network.
He'll still be on the sticker at that point. When old man Kenny stickers are being sold in the OPE network shop.
But I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't say it. That if you think about it, they gave him a 3-year deal. He'll still only be like 31 or 32 when that's up. So that's if true. He can, and the good thing about a 4-3 is D linemen tend to have a longer career than, most other players. I mean, who was it that just, who was the one that was still working out for teams and he's been in the league forever? That he just signed with the Ravens.
Crud.
God, I can't think of his name now. He's a defensive.
The sounds you guys are making trying to remember, I'm not sure you're talking about, unfortunately. I wish I could help more, but
I think he was with the Cardinals for the longest time. Help me out, Mike. You're supposed to be the memory of this group.
Crud. Hold on. No. I'm totally. I know, but I'm also totally blanking.
This is riveting.
I know, right?
Podcasting
right here. This is awesome.
we come in so prepared.
So there's a guy,
Justin Tucker. No, that's the kicker.
Him now.
Brent Urban.
Yeah, that's one of them. But there was another one that. Maybe he didn't sign with Ravens. Maybe it was the Dolphins. But anyway, what I'm getting at is these defensive linemen tend to last longer in the league than most others. And other than, some ticky-tacky things with like groin and hamstring and that, Kenny's never really had major injury issues.
Yeah, he's had the nagging stuff, but he hasn't really missed time. Like,
right.
He's been limited, but there kind of thing.
And if I think of the name, I will make sure to put it on our socials because it's going to bug me the rest of the friggin' night. But anyway, that's not what we're here for. It was just a lucky coincidence that happened on the night that we were going to be recording.
Kenny is that important that we will divert 13 minutes of a pod to congratulating him on his third contract because we love the big dancing bear, the Golden Bruin. So congratulations, Kenny. We're happy for you to be back for another 3 years in addition to this year. And we expect big things from him moving forward. But we have brought Matt Pickett on the show to go over, like I said, another riveting top 5. And if my daughter will stop turning my volume off on my headphones, we're going to get right to it. But
hey, she's got an opinion too, man. She's got an opinion.
What she's trying to tell me is that my music choices absolutely are trash. not to be blasting my J-pop or video game music when I come to pick her up from her stuff in 12 years and embarrass her in front of her friends. But that's a little light preview of my list that we'll be coming up with. But today it's top 5 musical acts, groups, singers, whatever. How, as we've done with so many of these, it is take it and make it what you want it to be. Matt, we're happy to have you on here. And as Joe kind of alluded to, there's some preparation, and then there will be the inevitable, oh, shit, I forgot to add that guy to my list, or that girl or that group. So do not fear, Matt. If you hem and haw like you were worried about, or think, oh, that was a good choice, I doubt any of mine will be that kind of thought-provoking. But
well, and like we were talking about before starting to record, there's just so many out there that could be considered, top 5s. Even though this is great content for the off-season top 5s, a lot of these topics are hard to just narrow down to 5, whatever, groups, acts, whatever. There's just so much of it out there that can be considered because, I mean, music goes back since to like the dawn of man. I mean, you had the Neanderthal over there pounding on a rock, making some kind of musical rhythm out of it. It just happens. And So I'm sure, even though I have my 5 wrote down, that I may, somebody will say something that'll jog a memory. It's like, okay, I got to add this person and take this one out. And just making my list earlier, I've checked it 100 different times and subtracted one and added another. And no, I better do this. And so, like we normally do, we always let the guests go first. You don't have to do it in any specific order. I'm going to do mine from 5 to 1. So that's up to you how you want to do it. But we'll just round robin it, and you give us your first one.
Okay, well, I'll do mine chronologically, actually, from like when they first came on the scene to the modern era. And I'll also mention, for those who don't know much about me, I was actually a band teacher for 13 years before I had my current job, which I talk about on my podcast, Hey, We Like Your Pod. I currently work as an academic advisor at the University of Cincinnati, but suffice to say I have degrees in trombone performance, that's my name, Matt Trombone on Twitter, and also music education. So, I think that's probably why you guys asked me to do music for you with this one. So if people are wondering,
absolutely,
like, who's this guy? What grounds does he have to stand on to talk about music? Well,
it's not just that. We just love Matt, and Matt had to come
we
back.
always enjoy a man with a properly lubed up slide and a consistently emptied spit valve on his trombone. And
I'm glad you
Pickett
didn't have a break there, because that was sounding really bad at the moment. So
I mean, I can do it in all 7 positions. So absolutely,
nice. Excellent. Did you play the trombone with the extra trigger for the lower octaves, or do you?
Yeah, of course,
just
man.
All right.
Got my F
God, I think Mike played the trombone, and I didn't even know it.
No,
the way he knows.
I played tenor sax, but where we sat in our band, we sat in front of the trombone. So yeah,
You're familiar.
We sat in front of the trombones and to the left of the baritones. So lots of fun conversation amongst friends there.
So yeah, that's the fun part of the of any ensemble, is the low brass. Like, they're silly and they're friendly without being destructive like the percussionists are. So yeah, that's good people to hang with for sure during rehearsals or outside of rehearsals.
I spent 2 years in elementary playing sax, the alto sax, but that's as far as it went for me.
It's never too late to pick it back up, Joe.
Yeah, I know. That's what I hear.
So my first one. All right. So I said chronologically, my first, and just again, it's musical acts, right? We're going with.
It can be singers, acts.
Make that whatever you want. If you say Lisa Simpson, we will take it.
Well, the reason I said just broad, generalized musical acts is because, if I would have just said singers, then you could have thought, okay, well, we're going to leave out actual bands. Or if I would have said bands, that leaves out like the solo singer. So musical acts, if you just, or if you like a musical, a stage musical, and you love that ensemble, go for it.
Yeah.
Or like Mike said, Lisa Simpson.
Yeah. So I asked the question specifically, not just to clarify for myself. Like I already had that, but really it's for the listeners, so they know kind of where we're coming from.
Yeah.
The thought process.
Matt leads this show better than we do, Mike.
So
this is why we bring guests on, to add an air of sophistication that neither of us can properly bring.
Well, here I'll hit you with some sophistication right here, you guys. All right. So my first one chronologically is the Ballet Russe, Sergei Diaghilev's ballet company from the early 20th century, especially because the time that they had Nijinsky as the choreographer, he was very the stuff they did was very provocative and very incited like actual crowds in the performances to start screaming at the performers. Like when you take the performance of The Rite of Spring, the premiere of The Rite of Spring in Paris, the performance was so inflammatory because the music was so like new and weird and strident and almost like combative to the listener, that it was literally people screaming at the stage. And it was not just the orchestra music was weird, but also the choreography that Nijinsky had developed for that was so like this new sort of brutal, caveman looking, like, primal sort of thing that like the refined French audiences just, they were up in arms. So half the, theater loved it, half the theater hated it. And it was the most insane scene. If there's one concert, if you want to call it a concert, if there's one concert I could go back to see it in my entire life, that is, in my life, but in history, that go back to, it'd be that one right there. Because just to see the chaos kind of like, unfolding inside this, like formal concert hall, it has to have been amazing. So number one with a bullet the Belarus, Sergei Diaghilev, and Nijinsky.
I don't know how we go on from that because Matt just like blew this show wide open with the out there choice. I would have never thought of that. Here, I thought I was going to have some, sophisticated little add-ins on mine, and Matt just punted mine out the end zone.
Well, my other frog me like fart jokes, so don't worry about it. So,
so that hey, you got to go now, Mike, because you got to follow that one.
All right. Well, mine are not in any sort of order, so mine are just going to be reactionary to everyone else's, and to go off of a great conductor, or like what Matt just introduced. I don't even know how to properly quantify. I'm going with Japanese composer Nobuo Uematsu. And if you're sitting there wondering, who the hell did Mike just pick, some Japanese guy with the last name that I'll never spell correctly? Nobuo Uematsu is one of the lead composers for Square. Originally Square, now is Squaresoft, which is the developer for the Final Fantasy string of games. That's their mainstream. The Kingdom Hearts line, they're linked with Kingdom Hearts with Disney. And Nobuo Uematsu has, he has composed and led the Square Orchestra or Square Symphony through the soundtracks of many of their biggest games. A lot of, like Final Fantasy VII, which is going through its remake, and is doing basically reimaginations of the original soundtrack. Kingdom Hearts is bringing out its 4th game, hopefully by the time that I'm still able to see the TV screen when I play on my PS, whatever edition is on. But he just, it's, I think what, if you enjoy like soundtracks of any movie, TV show, video games are no different. There's a story to be told. Soundtrack music is used to do anything from fill in the gaps in the story to, increase the heightening of the plot, and just crescendo with the rise in just the pace of the storytelling. All those kind of things can be cued in from soundtracking, and Uematsu has he has put together an incredible body of work, whether it's just like the title screen music, dearly beloved from the Kingdom Hearts games, or any of the battle music from like the Final Fantasy games, or even something as simple as like the little victory tones, which I'm sure people around you have probably had on their phones, and you're kind of just like, what the hell is that? But it's one of those where it's like it gives another dimension of depth to video games that I have grown up with and loved, and the music is as identifiable to the video game as it is with any of the characters, the storytelling, box art, whatever angle you want to look at it. The music is just as integral of a part, and Uematsu has had a profound impact on not just the games he's done, but also like just his contemporaries, because they do like people will joke that you can tell which movie soundtrack composers work with each other, because it's like that sounds like that, or they must be friendly because his thing for this sounds like his thing for that and stuff. Or you get the ones where Hans Zimmer is like, hey, I'm working on like 4 movies, so 2 of them I might piggyback a little bit, and you'll have this and that kind of thing. So and Uematsu is just doing it in different countries. So yeah, that's my first choice, Nobuo Uematsu.
Mike, I love that, because I feel like there's been more of a legitimization of video game music as being something worth hearing outside of just like while you're playing it. I feel like in the last 10 years especially, I've seen like orchestras actually playing scores from video games, and that's been cool to see, because like the idea that we should say that this isn't as worthy of people's attention and time and money put into it is silly, because it's like these are just composers, whether they're composing a jingle or a symphony or music for a score for something, whatever it is. Like these are all people who are working hard through the creative process to develop something, and the kind of work that goes into scoring a video game, it baffles me to like see what all goes into it, and just like a great film score makes the movie, a great video game score makes such a big difference. And even just like the sort of indelible impressions they can make on our minds. Like think about just the original Super Mario Brothers theme. You know, everyone can sing it from memory. I've arranged it for various ensembles, you know, my time as a teacher and stuff like that. Like some of this is some really amazing music. So just bringing that into the conversation, Mike, respect.
I'm all for it. I'm a gamer. You know, some of the best music you can hear is out of a video game. So, matter of fact, I remember, what game was there? Was like Twisted Metal 4 was one of the first games that you could actually pop out of your PlayStation, put it into your CD player, and you could get the soundtrack off of it. And so, I mean, that's just how far things got into it. But yeah, video game orchestration is on par with like movie and TV show orchestration because, like Mike was saying, it helps build the drama. It helps, you know, when something's scary, there's, you know, you're not going to have, you know, a circus tune playing. You want something that's going to build that terror with it. And yeah, so I can go with it.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. So now this is the first of many rewrites on my list, probably because I didn't know you guys were going to go that deep into things. So I had to cheat. I have to go with my number 5. And if we're going to go with orchestrations and scores and that, and you're going to leave out John Williams, then there's something wrong with you, because that man is a genius.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just Star Wars. He's done Indiana Jones. He's done many TV shows and movies.
Pick your Spielberg movie. Like, just pick a Spielberg.
Pretty much.
Seriously.
And I mean, that music is timeless. And everybody, even if they don't know the movies that well, they still know the style of music that's being played if it's played around them. Or, you know, there's, I think they still do it where it's a orchestra that travels around either the country or the world or whatever, and they play the live score during the movies, and or they just take clips from the movies and play it while they're playing the score and stuff like that. And you don't see that with much other, you know, many other movie type things or TV shows. But what do you see it with? John Williams, Star Wars. Yeah, see, she agrees.
So, Imperial Stormtrooper March is her theme music in life.
So, well, that's the thing. Everybody knows a piece of the music, whether they know what it's to or not. And when you want to talk about top artists, musicians, band leaders, you know, whatever you want to talk about, if you leave John Williams out, you don't know what you're talking about.
Good call. I mean, some of the most popular melodies you can imagine in our pop culture.
Yeah,
come from John
and I think what I've always appreciated about Williams is, like, obviously, you know, there's, like I said, just pick a Spielberg movie and it's almost guaranteed to be Williams's work. But like, you hear the story about Chris Columbus saying, like, you know, he's doing the first Harry Potter music. He's like, I need someone to do part of the soundtrack. He's like, I'll just write a quick one off to John Williams. He'll never say yes, says yes, writes Hedwig's theme song. And it's just like, okay. And it's sort of that, like, there's moments where obviously Williams, you know, he had to make it in any kind of role in Hollywood. You have to have your connections. And obviously he has some absolutely great ones where, you know, he's tied, like I said, Spielberg, Lucas, you know, he's tied to those, but just, I feel like a part of the reverence I have for him, kind of like what you're alluding to, Joe, is that he's kind of just been gung-ho for anything and everything in his career. And honestly, like, I know that he had the, you know, he has obviously the bucket loads of laurels to rest on, but I mean, you look at the movies he scored and it's like, how do you go from this to that to there to everything? And I think my favorite one is the story that Spielberg tells about when Williams brought him the Jaws, you know, the Jaws that then he says Spielberg thought he was playing a prank on him, and Williams is like, no, that's it, that's your fucking shark. And he's like, okay, wait, sorry, play it again. You know, Spielberg had to like compose himself, and I was like, all right, play it again. And then he's like, oh shit, that's it kind of thing. So yeah, like Yeah, like you said, Joe, a career, and I can't believe that he's 92 already, but what a life, what a career for John Williams.
Well, and just going through a lot of the stuff that he's done, I mean, obviously everything Star Wars, everything Indiana Jones. I think the story is that he retired. Then they decided they were making another Indiana Jones movie. He said, "All right, I'll come to it. Yeah, that's fine." And then there's the Jurassic Park movies. He scored the Jurassic Park movies. Like you said, the Harry Potters. I want to say, and that's what I wanted to start looking for, because he's even done some that you wouldn't even have thought that he would have done. There's Superman. He's done the Superman movies.
Mm-hmm.
Goonies. I'm pretty sure he's the one that did the score for the Goonies too. Patriot.
Right? I've forgotten that. That's a good one.
He did the Patriot, Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find it, but he's done so much it's hard to find all the ones that he's done. JFK. But I'm pretty sure Ferris Bueller. He worked on Ferris Bueller.
That's actually John Williams going chicka chicka.
Yeah. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he didn't do Goonies. Maybe it was Superman instead of Goonies.
He definitely did Superman.
Yeah. No, I'm not seeing Goonies, so I was wrong. But Ferris Bueller, how would you have thought he would have done anything on Ferris Bueller?
Uncredited on Empire of the Sun. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, I thought maybe it was somebody else that did Goonies, and he's in the same level. But all right, Matt, after my ramblings, let's go with your next one.
Sure. My number 2, how can you not talk about Louis Armstrong? Because the entire history of jazz funnels up to him, through him, and then out of him. Because the sort of presence and hold he had on the development of jazz when he was at the peak of his powers in the 20s and into the 30s was such that everybody was listening to him. Everybody was copying his style. Everybody was taking his articulation and his sense of swing and how to play the music and was taking it and drawing from that. You talk to you talk to Miles Davis. You can't. He's dead. You can't talk to Miles Davis. But Miles Davis has said in interviews that his playing is directly just from Louis Armstrong. So somebody as influential as Miles Davis, who then everybody else is I'm taking direction from, and taking cues from and following, because he was such a leader in the various permutations he went throughout his, journey as a jazz musician. You see the way how the branches kind of shoot out and they all come down to the very root to Louis Armstrong. And the stuff before him was kind of various kinds of proto jazz things, but he took those and became the voice, the sort of incubator, the catalyst for all of it, the root ultimately. And so if we're going to say what's the act? Well, at the time, kind of where he was doing his foundational work that became really kind of popular was with his Hot Fives and then later Hot Sevens, which was the name or the number of people in the group at the time, roughly. But you have the trombonist Kid Ory, his wife played piano, Lil Hardin. You had who else was in the group? I should know some of these off the top of my head. Johnny Dodds on clarinet, I think, was in there in the beginning. So some really important music that established what jazz would become, which in turn, of course, also influenced other kinds of music, that plays into the development of popular music as well, and just kind of spins out all over the place. So just even music as we know it today, as far as popular music in the 21st century in the US, would not be at all what it is now if not for Louis Armstrong. So that would be my number 2 chronologically.
And you got to say his most well-known song is "What a Wonderful World," and it's still getting played on everywhere.
His most well-known song is not a bad song, but I say unfortunately because that's his
style. Yeah,
it's his I just called to say I love you. Is what that is basically. His syrupy popular. It's a great song. We actually sing it to our kids at bedtime sometimes, but it's so different from his seminal foundational work. It is a lovely song. It is definitely his most popular one. I agree. and it's a great song.
Yeah, well, I was just meaning that keeps his name around for people to know, because that song's still getting play on, you know, whether it's in a movie, a TV show, even a friggin' commercial, you know, they're still playing that. I know who he is. I've heard his music because, like I said, I listen to a lot of things, but I don't always put two and two together to say, okay, well, you know, that's. But I do know he was also a trumpet player.
Oh yeah, primarily a cornet, but yeah, yeah. So it's funny. It's like when you say like, why don't like when people think of his music, of course they're going to think of that because people aren't going to be like, oh, you know, I was listening to West End Blues yesterday. I was listening to Beale Street Blues. I was listening to, you know, like, of course, you know, you're right. Like that's the song he's known for at this point. But yeah, it's funny you say that, Joe, because it's like so much of his important music I'm talking about is mostly forgotten by the general public at this point. It's just kind of like become, you know, such like a foundational thing layers back. But yeah, what's he known for? What a Wonderful World. Beautiful song.
And you know, I mean, I've seen like old videos of him too, because he was very recognizable because he had that big puffy cheeks and that deep gravelly voice and stuff like that. But you know, there's every so often when I feel like the mood, I think it's on Friday nights, late night, it's on one of our NPR stations where they have it's called Blues After Midnight, and they play like pre-World War II era like music. And you know, like I said, I don't always put two and two together, say, oh yeah, that's Louis or that's Miles or whatever, but I can sit there and listen to it all the way. You know, I drive 25 minutes home, so you know, I can fit a full 25 minutes of just listening to that stuff in a drive. And yeah, that era is one of the probably the purest eras of music you can have, because it's just coming out of the big classical ballroom style, you know, music to the flappers, to then you have it form into like the jazz era. And you know, that was the soundtrack of that era. And you know, he was a big key in that.
Big part of that. Yep, absolutely.
All right, Mike, what other video game one you got going for us?
Well, to Weave and Bob, like I said, I'll get back to that in another one. But to tie in, honorable mention I have is the undisputed brother is Kamaka Viva Ole to be one of the representatives of Hawaiian music. I point to him as an honorable mention. I know this is a little bit sacrilegious, and I hope that Night Marcher doesn't come through my window anytime soon to lash me for this. But isn't my favorite Hawaiian musician, but he's definitely one of the top, and he's probably the most iconic. Similar to what we were just kind of talking about with Louis Armstrong, is that I can't find if it was a direct inspiration, but has the Somewhere Over the Rainbow, What a Wonderful World song that so many people tied, like that is their entry drug into Hawaiian music. It's been a absolute foundation. It's been used in so much mainstream U.S. media. Like played while Anthony Edwards passed away on ER. It's been used in many different movies. Different clips of it have just been dotted along different parts of U.S. media. So want to give a shout out to Brother Is. But my next one is actually going to be another Hawaiian musician, Keali'i Raichel. And
I was waiting for it to be Don Ho.
No tiny bubbles right now, but I could play that song at one point. But Keali'i Raichel is so he is just a living representation of Hawaiian music. For he's from Lahaina, and any event you go to, some Keali'i song is going to play at it. And just the accolades that he's won, he's all over Hawaiian Music Awards. He's just got so many of them under his belt. But if you're wondering a song that maybe you've heard him, he's one of the singers for the Land Before Time theme song. And yeah, so if you go and search If We Hold On Together, and you find the Kaylee Reichel version, you can hear the vocal range that he has. And the nice part from a Matt, from a composition point of view of his music, he has very, very basic music at the heart of his songs. It's, like I have a couple friends in or who do live performances. My boss does, he lives up in Seattle, but he'll play, guitar and bass for his band, and they perform at weddings, events. And, he always jokes that it's like, there's only like 5 chords and they're repeated over and over again. So I bring that up to show like the weight that his vocals bring to all of his music, and why he is, like I said, one of the pillars, the hallmarks of Hawaiian music, and why I think that why I have him as my representation of Hawaiian music on my list. So Kaylee Reichel is like I said, mine aren't in order. I am using mine to react and read and react to your guys' listings.
Well, the only reason I laughed, and it's not because I know the guy or anything, but this is the second time in 3 weeks that Mike's brought up Land Before Time in one of his lists.
Like I said, absolutely a core memory.
So, Mike, of course, you were on my podcast about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, that was maybe. Yeah. And it was such a fun time talking to you then, because you told Dawn and I about so much stuff about just living in Hawaii, Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian history. So to hear like another part of that, it's kind of like it's a flashback to when we were like recording that episode with you. So hearing about some Hawaiian music stuff is like, it's great. I love hearing about that.
No, it's really great. I mean, I obviously haven't heard of him, but everybody kind of knows some of the tones that you get from a Hawaiian or an island style of music. And, they are, and this isn't to denigrate it or anything, but they are basic like chords in that, but it still comes out as a beautiful piece of work because they can make it work that way.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to go with my number 4, and it's not classical, not anything. This is where I start getting into, okay, this is stuff that Joe listens to on like a regular basis, but can be considered in a lot of people's top 5s. So at my number 4, I've got Jim Croce. And this guy, had he not died as early as he did, I think still would be making beautiful music, because just the amount of music he put out in the short amount of time he did, I mean, it was just amazing stuff. Again, stuff that today is still getting played in modern media, like Leroy Brown and Time in a Bottle, and I've Got a Name, and just songs like that, Operator. Just some of the most heartfelt music and good, listening music that you can have. And, like I said, had he not died early on, I think he would have he'd been one of the top guys, because he was not only a singer and a musician, he was also the composer of a lot of his music too.
And his lyrics are always so much fun, like good, little character studies. Leroy Brown, or he also did Don't Mess Around with Jim, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like a little character study, little storytelling is wonderful, and just really great songs. Every time a Jim Croce song comes on, I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Oh yeah, like I said, I've got playlists, and there's a lot of his stuff on there. Another one that, like you said, with the character study is Operator, because that's telling of the story of how his best friend stole his girlfriend, and he wanted to call the girlfriend and say it was all right and all that, but he was still having a hard time getting over the, it just, like I said, it's that heartfelt thing that you feel it. You don't only just hear it, you feel it when it plays.
Yeah.
And it's great stuff. That's, like I said, he will always probably be in my top 5.
I like it. That's good.
All right, Matt, let's see where you go now with your number 3.
Yeah. So, it was important for me to say at the top, like what my background is, so people know like also what my biases are. A trombone player, so I'll have certain biases towards like, your better trombone players, brass sections. And so this brings me to number 3, which is the Chicago Symphony Orchestra from roughly 1950 to 2000, because that was the time that Adolf Bud Herseth was playing lead trumpet with them. And so he was, for my money, the best orchestral trumpet player of all time. So why does that matter to trombone players? Well, when you have somebody that good, who's that strong of a leader and pushing, you know, a really aggressive sound from the brass, the other, you know, brass players are emboldened and encouraged to match that level of intensity. And so the brass sections from the CSO to this day, you know, not just through 2000, or I think he was the principal trumpet till like 2001 or something, whenever it was, those recordings are still like the gold standard for many brass players out there wanting to hear, like, well, how can we approach like this Bruckner symphony, for example? Well, what did CSO do in their 1978 recording, you know? So that kind of, I think aggressiveness is the best way to describe the sound of the CSO's brass section in that era, and again to the modern day. So that's the way how I like the orchestra sound, with a lot of brass, because I'm biased, because I'm a trombone player. And that is like the best representation of it. And you know, it's a lot of conductors, not composers. A lot of conductors will be like, okay, you know, brass, you're playing too loud, play quieter. But the CSO is like, no, we're gonna let the brass just kind of do what they're gonna do, because Bud Herseth is kind of the Aaron Rodgers, kind of running things, you know, on the side there, basically. So yeah, for sure, number 3 chronologically, talking about the CSO, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra from the 50s to the early 2000s, with Bud Herseth on lead trumpet.
Now, forgive me my ignorance on like orchestrations and that, but don't they sit like, you have like your number 1 chair, your number 2 chair, stuff like that, and usually the number 1 chair is like your lead, and the rest of them kind of fall in line with that one?
Higher pitch to second, higher pitch, like third, usually, like as far as the orchestration goes. So like your lead trumpet's playing the higher notes, whereas like the third trumpet's playing lower notes, for example. And yeah, the lead trumpet, the first trumpet player, like in an orchestra, would be playing the melody a lot, especially if the brass have the melody. A lot of times it's going to the first chair trumpet. So very much like a leader in terms of the way how things are scored, but also they tend to be, because you want to match up to what that person is doing melodically. So kind of matching that sound is going to be what all the brass players do. Like the people in the trombone section will listen up to the lead trombone player who's listening up to the lead trumpet player. Like in the best orchestras that I played in, they have the first chair trombonist sit next to the first chair trumpet player and have the like trombones and trumpets kind of going, you know, outward from them. Because that way you're listening right directly to what they're doing and like kind of, you know, blending into it, matching it.
Right. So it just makes sense that you would want your one guy to, you know, set the pace, set the, you know, tone for things, and then, you know, branch off of it from there. So no, that's really a good pick. I've never been one per se for like classical type of music, but I can appreciate how a lot of, you know, how the orchestra is, because it is such an intricate like thing. You know, a lot of us take it for granted when we're watching movies, like, oh yeah, the music sounds great, but we don't know all the work that goes in behind it, and you know how it's all set out and stuff like that. So no, that's really interesting.
Glad you liked it.
All right, Mike.
All right, so my first name is Michael for a lot of different reasons, mostly athletes. Michael Jordan, Michael Johnson, but Michael Jackson is an inspiration behind why my name is Michael.
I was kind of worried there for a minute.
No matter what you say about him in his private / not so private home life, the musical ability that he had, like Matt has kind of pointed to, you know, who is the root of the tree of, you know, different types of brass, orchestral, symphony music. There are so many modern artists who post their inspiration to what Michael Jackson did, you know, both in the Jackson 5 and as a solo artist. Michael Jackson is, I believe, the first concert I went to when alive. My dad's sister is, whichever way you want to look at it, a ginormous Michael Jackson fan. I had to text her, call her on the day that he passed away to make sure that she was okay. She was, but she got tickets to it in the, what was it? Shoot, I think it was the mid 90s. He came on tour to Hawaii and he had a, you know, like a week of concerts at Aloha Stadium, and kind of like John Williams, Michael Jackson has a wide ranging, you know, he has his albums, but where his music pops up. And one of the movie series that I did not bring up in our top 5 movie series, it was the Free Willy movies. And Michael Jackson had, you know, he was a part of that soundtrack. And to which, even at his funeral, when Jennifer Hudson sang that song, my mom goes, "Why does Jennifer Hudson have the Free Willy song?" But, it is a good song. But, you know, that first Free Willy movie, I love Whales. I love that movie. I know it's not a perfect movie by any means, but like I said, Michael Jackson's, you know, part of the soundtrack, it's a huge part of that movie. And then just you look at, you know, there's numerous artists. You have, you know, Kanye sampling Michael Jackson's music in some of his early 2000s rap music. You have different artists taking inspiration from his music. And I so wish that I was 5 to 10 years older when I went to that concert, because I would have loved to have fully grasped, you know, understood the moment of how big, how, you know, just how amazing of a performing artist Michael Jackson was at the time. So it wasn't, you know, it's not just I was there. It was more that I got to like fully, you know, embrace it. Another footnote, the other Michael Jackson performance I was at is he did, was it, hold on, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Like Joe has said many times, this is excellent radio. But, okay, hold on. So, starting off the story, I have been to a Super Bowl before. I was almost 3 years old. My mom, so this is what happens when you're in Hawaii. If you're an accountant, you know all the accountants on island. My parents work for 2 different accounting firms, and between the 2 of them, they know 100% of the accountants in their age range, and a lot of their offshoot, you know, their successors and stuff like that, their proteges and all. But so she knew a guy who ended up working for CBS and NBC, and was able to get her 40-yard line tickets in the Rose Bowl for Super Bowl 27.
Wow.
So I got to go to a Super Bowl before, and my dad constantly reminds me how he did not see the halftime show or all of the third quarter, because he spent that entire time trying to find a place to change my dump diaper. And eventually a security guard spotted my father looking hopeless, trying to find a bathroom with not a long line, and allowed him to my father to change me on the back of his security golf cart. But Michael Jackson was the halftime show. Long story coming to an end. I have seen Michael Jackson perform twice, but like I said, I can't even add those 2 ages together to like say that I would have been at an age to fully appreciate his performing ability, you know, live. But to be able to say, like I said, to at least be able to say I was there twice to see Michael Jackson live is a neat part of history, music history, because like I said, whatever you want to say about his home life, whatever personal decisions and all that kind of stuff,
yes,
you cannot deny the charisma, the talent that he brought to live music. And just like I said, his discography is extensive and prolific, and it spawns so much. You know, he is the king of pop, and he will always be the king of pop in my eye.
Yeah, that's such a good pick, Mike, and it means I can take one off my list that I was thinking of for my 5th one, by the way. So glad you mentioned him. One less for me to think about. Yeah, the king of pop, exactly. I mean, growing up in the 80s, because I was born in 1977, like I felt like Michael Jackson was always on the radio. It was always a hit, you know, whether it's from Bad or from Thriller.
And it was always a new disc. It was always a new album kind of thing. You know?
Yeah. His output, like the extreme popularity, he had a stranglehold on the 80s music scene, you know, like and beyond too. Yeah, you can't overestimate how much impact and influence he had on pop music from the 80s going forward. So that's a great pick.
He was on my honorable mention too. And you know, like Mike said, whatever his issues weren't, whatever, it's not a debate here on that. Just the talent was always there. And I'm always reminded about something, and I know this is a weird bring up, but there was a comedian called Moms Mabley, and I remember watching a documentary a few years back, and on it, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg said that tragedy in somebody's life usually always makes them a good performer, whether it's a comedian or a musician or whatever. And if you think about it, look at some of the best musicians we've ever had. They've had some kind of issues in their life that, you know, let's face it, Michael Jackson had a rough childhood, and it carried over into adulthood and that. And just to listen to a lot of the music and, you know, performances that he would have is just, it's amazing stuff. So yeah, like I said, he was an honorable mention for me on mine too. So
absolutely.
Okay. So now this is, again, we're getting in the heart of stuff that Joe listens to on a constant basis. I do I'm just reading private comments from Mike, so Mike will be off for a minute. But Hailstorm. My number 3 is Hailstorm. Okay. And it's more of a heavier rock / like metal type thing. Lizzie Hale, her brother RJ is the drummer. Lizzie Hale's the lead singer and guitarist. And they grew up in the Pittsburgh area, I want to say. And it's just some of the, if I had to pick a genre of music that I listen to more, it is more of your harder rock, metalish type stuff. And the voice that she has to go with that music, her voice could be in any genre. It crosses genre. They released an album in 2020 where, you know, obviously everybody was shut down, so they couldn't really do, you know, touring and all that. So, but she covered "I Will Always Love You," the Whitney Houston version of it, and she just nailed it. But then in a previous album, or it was an album after that, they covered 21 Savage's "Heathens," and she nailed that one out of the park. And she's done like Pharrell's "Happy," or not Happy, Pharrell's "Up All Night." Is that what the name of it is? I can't even think of it off the top of my head. No, Get Lucky. Get Lucky.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And she nailed that. But they do their own original stuff, and it's just amazing her quality that she has. You know, her voice and everything else, and then the music just adds to it. So they're always, again, like Jim Croce, this one will always be like a top on my list, unless they start doing some weird ass stuff that just kind of is not what they started out to be. But so far, you know, knock on wood, they haven't done that yet.
Yeah. So Hailstorm, you said? I'm actually not familiar. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, HALE and then just Storm, STORM.
Excellent.
And it's a little bit more of a heavier tone. So I mean, if you're not big on like hard rock or metal or something like that, it might not be everybody's favorite. But like I said, they do some lighter stuff now and again, and it like I said, her voice is just amazing.
Love that. Cool, man.
All right, so we got to cover time because Mike is on kid duty at the moment. So let's go ahead.
I'm next anyhow, so yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So take your time with it.
Oh, he's coming back in. Okay, so my number 4. So here's like, okay, I'll say for me, like trying to pick top 5. You can tell definitely I was trying to think towards like more influential sort of acts, and so I have to get past like the first 3 for me. Those are kind of chalk, honestly. When we get to like 4 and 5, it's like, well, music splinters in all kinds of different directions, you know, from the 50s on, really. So it gets trickier to like think for me what are the influential ones, or like who had the most impact. And so that's why, Michael Jackson was kind of in my mind there at some point to bring up. But where I want to go for my number 4 is James Brown, because obviously, I hope this is obvious, the story of like the development of popular music in America is the story of white people taking black people music and saying, hey, this is cool, right? We can do this, or just saying like, hey, let's appropriate, So I think that I couldn't say, because I don't know the history well enough to say James Brown was like this major breakthrough artist, because people were listening to black music, before that. But like, I think he was showy enough and his music was like high quality enough to say like that he was a milestone. And I do think I can say that a lot of what came for like funk music after that was born out of like the bands that he had, the musicians he had. I mean, Bootsy Collins played with them, Clyde Stubblefield, we're talking Maceo Parker, all kinds of like really important musicians like for the funk movement kind of like came after him, kind of came through, his bands. So like everyone knows who James Brown is, everyone, there's probably songs you could probably just come to the top of your mind when you think of James Brown. His music's still used in advertisements and movies today. He's had a lasting impact. What's that?
And TikToks, there's a common one where it's a big scare one where they have the speaker hidden somewhere and then they play the opening to I Feel Good with his loud scream and it scares them.
I'm not on the TikToks as much myself, but that is hilarious. Glad to hear that his legacy lives on. And like,
that is trying to help suppress the Chinese invasion.
So, yeah, James Brown, man, hugely influential, an absolute terror to work for. My understanding is, in fact, I heard a story that like, every like, ow, I got you. All kinds of things that he's doing in his music that just sound like, they're just like soulful. When they were performing live, every little one of those things meant something to the band. A lot of which was like, hey, I heard you like play a wrong note and I'm going to dock you some pay because of that. So like, there was like this, like he was raining like on the stage with like terror and a codified language musically to like let the people know if he's going to dock some of their pay. So like the band was, especially tight out of fear, but that also means like a higher quality of music and point being, James Brown, not the best human maybe, but absolutely like an innovator and somebody who brought the funk to a larger audience. I should say soul music, because the funk kind of came from that. So James Brown, number 4 for me.
And he was also one of the first showmen, because he would actually put the show out on stage. Absolutely. And because the most common one that I can think of is where he's singing so much and then he starts crumpling to the ground, and then somebody comes up behind him with the cape and kind of and then he throws off the cape and starts dancing more.
Exactly.
So,
yes,
true showman. And really that's probably one of the first time you see like the big productions on stage is when he starts doing those showman type things. So that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, man, and for a lot of white people, first time they see a lot of that, in the 60s, and just representing for black music at the time too, for people to say, yeah, you know what, we can we can all do this. We can love the black music. Black people can keep developing in this. And I'm babbling now, but yeah, man, James Brown, awesome.
And that's the form of music where they can say, here, try to steal this form of it, guys.
Yeah. Good luck.
All right, Mike is back from his child duty. So what you got for your number 2 or number 4, all whichever way you're going?
Darts on a board. My fourth one is going to be Boyz II Men. And okay. So once again, kind of a nebulous, not the nebulous, because you've had group bands before, group ensembles before Boyz II Men, obviously, but the Backstreet Boys have basically said Boyz II Men was one of their inspirational, driving forces to them becoming a boy band.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard other boy bands that point to Boyz II Men, their style of music, as inspiration, and they're just so damn good. I don't even need to put too much else to it. I mean, I have so much Boyz II Men. I listen to Boyz II Men driving in my car, getting up in the morning, at the gym, like just name it. The best thing to come out of Philly, yes, even better than the Philly cheesesteaks. Boyz II Men. Like I said, I just don't have much to say because they're that good. I've actually seen them live twice in Honolulu because they used to come out pre-COVID and do a couple. They would come out around Valentine's Day actually, so it made for a nice fun Valentine's Day date kind of thing for me and Marisol. But they're really good live. It's unfortunate that Mike McCreary isn't part of the group anymore, but it just goes to show how talented they are that they've the three remaining guys, Nathan Morris, Sean Stockman, and Wanya Morris, they've basically split up Mike's parts and said, like, yeah, we're still going to perform all of our old songs. Nathan is usually the one who does the bass lines, but, you know, they'll all kind of dabble in it depending on, like, who's got to sing their part and stuff like that. And they just sound as good as they did in the late 80s, early 90s, and when they performed live, and they started to dabble in a little bit more like kind of jazz or like fusion music with their newer albums and stuff. And but yeah, like I said, not many words because they're just an establishment, just so well known, and they've stood the test of time. And I really the only complaint I have is that them singing the national anthem in that 2019 NFC Championship game. I was just like, I don't know if I feel good about this. And then we got curb stomped after. I was like, God damn it. But I was like, at least we had Boyz II Men singing the national anthem to start this thing. I was like, that was about the best part of that game for me. But I mean, yeah. Like I said, I'm just going to cut myself off before I keep repeating the same thing over and over. Boyz II Men, my representation for boy band group.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I like that one a lot, Mike. I would have never thought to put them in a top 5, but man, like the revitalization of a doo-wop sort of mindset and approach to music with like the New Jack Swing that they brought with it, at a time when, you know, that was kind of becoming like a forgotten part of like popular music, to kind of bring back like, let's focus on like really, really tight vocals and harmonies. Ooh, I love it. It's good.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And they do a lot of acapella stuff, and I'm big into acapella music. So, you know, I like that kind of thing. Kind of a side note here, one of my favorite TV shows ever is Psych, and Boyz II Men does one of the best versions of the theme song that they've ever, because every so often they would redo the theme to fit the theme of the no, it was more just that episode. So like I think the episode that they were doing for that one was one of the main characters was in a doo-wop band in college, and they rejoined because one of their friends got murdered or whatever. So for the opening theme for that episode was Boyz II Men's version of the theme song, and it is highly rated amongst Psych fans. So
nice.
They even had a little cameo appearance in How I Met Your Mother. They did the vocals for the final slap bet episode of the series. So that was a fun callback for that long running art for that show. So
my number 2, and I'm surprised this genre has not been broached yet. So I guess I'm going to be the one to bring it up, and we'll see what happens from there. But this one I've listened to for a long ass time. He just dropped a new album recently, and that's Eminem. You know, you can say what you want about the rap genre, the hip hop genre, whatever. If you're going to put a Mount Rushmore of artists on there, you got to include him because he's really reshaped what that genre is. He, you know, up to that point, you got to think of what it was like for a white guy to get into rap. You had Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice, period.
Yeah, or the one-hit wonder guy, the what they call him, Snow Informer.
Oh yeah.
And then you have this guy come in, and he's going as hard as
Mhm.
Dre and Snoop and Tupac and those guys. And now that he's, well, I mean, he has been for a while now, but he's been doing his own, you know, he's got his own studio and stuff like that, where, you know, you got like guys like 50 Cent that have come out of his record label. And you know, and I know this newest album is kind of controversial in a way. Some people like it, some people hate it, but I understand what it's about. And I have a funny story that when the which one was it? Was it the Marshall LP? I think it was the Marshall Mathers LP. When that came out, at the time, my grandparents would always say, "All right, well, we want a list of stuff for what you want for Christmas."
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want the Marshall Mathers LP. Well, of course, you know, my grandma's like, "Well, I don't know what the fuck this is." So she sent my brother to the CD store. And remember, kids, at that time we had CD stores, and picked it up, and that's what I got for Christmas that year was and I, you know, ever since then I've always picked up every one of his new releases, or you know, I downloaded on Spotify or whatever now. But and that's where I go back to what I said about Michael Jackson. It always seems like people who have had the biggest tragedies in their life create the best stuff there is, because you're talking about a guy that when he was a kid got beat so bad that he was put in the hospital and was in a coma. And, you know, his mom was a drug addict. His dad wasn't there, you know, and he grew up in this lifestyle. And now he's one of the most influential guys in the world. And yeah, so that's another one. That's my number 2.
Yeah, I think it's really good to talk about hip hop as part of this conversation, because we haven't really gotten into that yet. I mean, trying to decide what my number 5 one was going to be, I was toying with the idea of doing like a Dr. Dre or someone, because I was just listening actually to the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend episode with Questlove, you know, from The Roots. Yep. And it's funny you mentioned Boyz II Men, actually, because he talked about them when he was on the show, because he went to the same high school at the same time as them. He's like, yeah, they were like really popular. They won all the talent contests, whereas the rest of us just trying to, like, you know, get something going on the side there. Because one of the things he said was like, you know, hip hop was trying to become more popular in the 90s with like Vanilla Ice and like MC Hammer, but the people who were like, you know, the real hip hop artists weren't like listening to those guys. They're like, this is a sideshow, this is like for the people or whatever. So it was like Dr. Dre who had the first big like album that was, he's like more like an authentic, respected, you know, rapper within the community who actually had a commercial success that said to other people who were doing hip hop, like, hey, this is commercially viable. You could actually make money doing this. So talking about hip hop in this, my point is like, yeah, that needs to be included in part of this, because it's such an important part of American music, and you know, I think will be with us for a very long time. So glad you brought that in, Joe. Love that.
Well, like I said, I listen to a ton of if I were to sit here and show people my playlists, they would just look at me weird, because it's not like a steady flow of things. It jumps from one genre to another genre and mixes, and you would think I was schizophrenic or multiple personalities or whatever, just because of all the things that I listen to. But Matt, it looks like you're getting pushed out, so we'll hurry up and get your number 1 out of here.
Yes, my podcasting space is also my kids' art space, so they came up after dinner here and are taking up space. So anyhow, love you, kids. So my last one, my 5th one, this is where it was really hard to figure out like what would be just the best one to end on. And so for me, you know, having grown up in the 80s and 90s, a big part of the music that I listened to in high school was grunge music. And so kind of, I feel like the central band in a lot of ways was Soundgarden. Not only did they have one of the best singers in all of rock and pop history, Chris Cornell, amazing, on their, you know, on par with like Freddie Mercury. So but really it was like the bands that really broke open the grunge music to the, you know, to the nation, for people to start really listening to it. You think of like, you know, Nirvana, of course, and Pearl Jam. Well, Nirvana, the guys in Nirvana had been listening to Soundgarden for years before they were even a band, and like really looked up to them. And Pearl Jam you know, was guys who kind of came out of another band called Mother Love Bone. And Eddie Vedder was somebody who they brought in kind of like the last person they needed for Pearl Jam. But Eddie Vedder was somebody who Chris Cornell kind of like championed from when he first kind of came onto the scene in Seattle. So in a lot of ways, Soundgarden is that sort of like central band. So not only that, but also I like their songs personally better than other like of the grunge bands, which, you know, and I love grunge music. So like to say better than Nirvana, yeah, actually I do like them better. I think the music is better overall. My daughter's freaking out over there. She's a huge Nirvana fan. So, but also my kids always like make fun of me for loving Chris Cornell so much. So there's that. There's a well-established history in my house of mocking me for that. But anyhow, yeah. So my fifth one, definitely Soundgarden.
No, that's, I mean, grunge is a solid topic, period. Just because, again, kind of like we were talking about with the Louis Armstrong pick. Mm-hmm. We were just coming out of the 80s where it was the big hair, you know, pop rock, you know, / kind of hard rock. And now we go into the grunge where, okay, well, this is darker. This is not the feel good. This is the storytelling type music to it. And I listened to some of the grunge, you know, Foo Fighters came out of that style. Yep. You know, the Nirvanas and the Soundgardens and Pearl Jams and now you're making me think again. All kinds of them.
Yeah, keep going.
But that also put Seattle on the spot or on the map because that was the Seattle sound. Mm-hmm. So I'm good with that one.
Excellent.
All right, Mike.
All right, so to tie into your rap, I can't believe I'm saying this. I left Nas off my top 5. And like same thing with Eminem. Nas comes from a different generation of an older generation of rap where he is one of he is one of the pillars of the rap genre. And the reason that Nas is my favorite rapper is most other rappers are like Eminem or like even Dr. Dre and stuff where, you know, they're at a very what's it called? Their word rate is very high. They're rapping at high velocity. I always appreciated that Nas, he was more of a storyteller, slow motion storyteller with his music, and that I could go in and listen to a song once and know every lyric that he's saying, as opposed to a lot of other ones like, oh my God, like I gotta listen to this verse like 14 different times to catch each of the 20 words that are in it. Yeah, or to go back into the era that we are from, when you bought the CDs and it had that booklet in the front.
That's what I'm talking about, the little book.
It had the lyrics in the front of the book.
Absolutely.
And you're like, holy crap, I thought he only said like 5 different things, but there's 20 words in this line. Forget the verse, there's 20 words on this line. But so that's one of the reasons. And just Ether. Like you just have to say Ether with Nas, and like you don't have to mention another. He's got so many other, you know, Heaven, like there's so many other like renditions, versions, just individual pieces of music that he's done. But I'm going to swing in a completely different direction for my last one. This is my inner ethnicity calling me home. And to represent J-pop, I have Hikaru Utada. And so the place that most people would have recognized her music from, again, video game. She sang the opening songs for the mainstream Kingdom Hearts games. But she's had a long career, I think over 20 years at this point, of producing music, relatively well known, you know, in American circles. And like, so obviously I do have like, yeah, the quote unquote, the inner white girl in me that, you know, plays Britney Spears and stuff like that at the gym. But also I will just blast J-pop, and Hikaru is at the top of the list for the music that's just, you know, like you said, Joe, it's if you well, nowadays we all have Bluetooth headphones anyway, but if it was in the era of our old wired headphones and I put my iPod down and someone picked it up, it would get thrown back on the ground so fast because you'd be like, what the who the fuck what is he listening to? And it's like yes. And so just to go into like my whole thing, when especially when I go to like a gym, like a 24-hour fitness or like my high school gym or anything like, or like any of the facilities at Michigan, you know, a lot of people listen to rap, hip hop, R&B kind of thing and stuff. I would listen to a lot of like I said, it was a lot more like melodies, soundtrack music, J-pop, like love songs kind of thing. Because it's like I never had a problem getting hyped up to do a set. It was always, the music was always there, and like within each song you can have, you know, heightened you can have the crescendos, you can have the change of the pace of the music and stuff. But I always listen to, like I said, more melodious music to get my breathing under control at the end of sets, because, you know, like I'm a power lifter in a not power lifter's body. And so you go, you know, you do these, you know, high intensity, low rep exercises. You know, the whole premise is like you inhale, brace, set your core, do your rep. And then it's all about in between, you know, I would do, like I said, I would do short interval lifting when I was at my quote unquote prime of weightlifting. And so in that 30 seconds to a minute in between, like, you know, you're trying to rep out like 225 or something like that, is like, okay, you have to like recenter, refocus, and get your breathing under control so that you don't like hyperventilate and pass out on your next set kind of thing. And it's like, I would always have these like I said, video game music to like bring me down. And then you have like a J-pop song or something to like, you know, it's not like yelling in your face, but the tempo is like it's a very poppy tempo that's like, it's, you know, it's getting you back into like, okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go, you know, like ready, 1, 2, 3, let's go kind of thing and stuff. And so, but yeah, so Hikaru Utada is my representation for my J-pop infatuation.
Excellent.
Hey, that's a solid pick. Like we were talking about with the video game stuff, you know, it's on par with movies in that where they produce just as well on video games as they do movies and TV shows. So we'll go ahead and wrap mine up real quick, because I know Matt's kids are kind of bugging him right now. So we'll get you out of here.
That's got the opposite of what I had when we had Grassi on last week. The lights are going out on him. The lights aren't coming on like they were for me.
So I'm going to go back a little, well, in time, it's going to go back a ways, but in conversation wise, I'm going to go back to like what Matt was saying with James Brown and Soul. And this man was called Mr. Soul. And this guy, I can listen to matter of fact, the last 3 days, just in prep for this podcast, I've had his music on like repeat, because ever since a young age, I've always loved his sound. And it's another guy that we lost at a younger age. That and if you go into true crime, it actually is an interesting true crime story on what happened to him, and that's Sam Cooke. I love his music, his voice, the style of music, the you know, kind of like Mike was saying, where you can follow along with the lyrics because he's, you know, singing it at a speed and a tone that just makes it easy to listen to. And there is a great documentary I watched on Netflix about Sam, and if I remember right, they said something about he couldn't hold notes for a long time, so that's why he started coming up with that warble, where instead of holding the note, he would just not like a scat or a something like that, but kind of like you hear from a Beyonce, where she doesn't hold the note forever. It just, and that's what he did with his music. And I know that was a horrible sound out of my mouth, but I'm tone deaf. So.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
But, you know, and again, we lost him young. I think he was only like 31 when he was killed. And it is under very mysterious aspects. So if you get a chance to look up his story, it is an amazing one. Like I said, there's a very good documentary on Netflix about him. And they, you know, I was listening to a song that he did in after an interview, and they had part of the interview in there, and they were calling him Mr. Soul, and he was just the heart of soul music.
Nice.
So if nobody's ever heard him, which it's hard to believe anybody hasn't heard him, because again, his music is in a lot of like movies and TV shows, I would give him a listen, because it really is an easy listening, easy to follow along type of music.
Soul music represent. Love it.
So that's top 5. Has anybody got any real quick honorable mentions they want to kind of throw out real quick before we settle things?
Yeah, without going into it, Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Aretha Franklin, Ella Fitzgerald.
You want me to really piss people off? I'm not a big fan of the Beatles.
You know, everyone knows somebody who is an obstinate bastard who I don't like the Beatles. I don't like chocolate. I don't like smiling.
Elton John would have been on my honorable mention.
Yeah, Elton's pretty good. Prince is on mine. Beach Boys.
Oh, yes.
Stuff like that. And honestly, with the Beatles, it's not so much that I don't like them. It's just I'm not like hype about them.
Sure.
And I find that I listen to a lot more of their songs as when they're covers than they are actually performed by the Beatles. So like Jeff Healey does an amazing version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And that's amazing. Or if you get into bluegrass a little bit, there's an old school bluegrass band called the Dillards. And they did I Just Saw a Face. And that's an amazing cover of it. So I listen to more of the cover songs of theirs than I do more of what they put on. So that's about it, Mike. Let's go ahead and take her home. Get Matt out here before his kids take over.
Like we said, we want to thank Matt Pickett for joining us today. Please follow him and Don on the Hey We Like Your Pod, and shout out to Don. Hope you're feeling better. Hope that this bout with COVID is going as smoothly as it can, and that you're back on your feet as soon as possible. Check out the Hey We Like Your Pod. Not because I was on it. They've had many, much better guests on.
You're the best one.
Much good time to and yes, I'm buttering Matt up and Don up to come back on the show, but also check out Hey We Like Your Pod. It's just a wonderful vibes pod. Just every week, just looking at the brighter side of life, and it's always a needed, necessary for all of us. So Matt, thank you very much for joining us and gracing us with the depth and breadth of your musical knowledge. We, like Joe said, we needed an air of sophistication added to our lists, and we did. Joe was able to pick the right guest for this one. So Matt Pickett at Matt Trombone on Twitter, a good fun follow. And like I said, the Hey We Like Your Pod, the Hey We Like Your pod, give them a follow and a listen over there. Like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe this pod if you're enjoying what you're hearing on your favorite podcasting app. Check out our website, ohanapackers.org. All of our, as Joe alluded to earlier, with the season approaching, we're going to have an upswing in our blog posts. Maybe one speaking co-host right now will start getting off his ass and writing stuff again, but that should be coming soon when actual news gets released and we're not just rehashing the same old stuff all the time. We not only limited to blog posts, but we also have streams of our episodes along with our merch. Joe is tirelessly adding new items to that. Please check out and support the site, the channel, the pod. We appreciate every little contribution everyone makes, and the quality of the merch is very good. I can attest to that. Check us out on Twitter. Please follow the podcast on Twitter, Ohana_Packers. You must be following the Twitter account to be eligible for our live drawings. And also when we have any sort of polls for our followers for episode ideas, content, different content ideas, we'll be posting all of those to the show Twitter account. Like I said, please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe. Reviews, give us your stars. Positive and negative comments, we want to hear all of it because we want to be producing the content you're looking for. A bit of good news from the Packers, but more off, we want to thank Matt Matt Pickett again for joining us with our top 5 musical artists, music groups, music performers, whatever label you want to put on it. This was an amorphous musical celebration, and we thank Matt for joining us. Thank all of you for joining us. Go Pack Go, and aloha.